right, friends, so now we're going to get started. The stream is on. The picture is bad. Sorry. Okay, so I'm going to use this, not my lapel. So the stream is the view we'll work on. There we go. And so welcome you all to the town hall. Taking a breath from worship, let's center ourselves, be in the space, and we pray, Holy One, thank you for this beloved church. Help us to continue to live into the calling as we talk about ministries, as we talk about business, as we talk about future directions. Continue to assure us that you are with us. In Jesus' name, amen. So friends, this is a very inclusive town hall. There's not just one or two things to talk about. There's a multitude of things to talk about. So hopefully you can go home and watch the stream if you need further information. I will try to go at a good pace, not too fast, but also not too slow for those who have afternoon activities and festivities. So one thing that, if you're aware of the MIT, the Ministry Innovation Team, we have been very intentional, or trying to be more intentional about how we are together and how we are organized and communicating that organization better to the congregation. And so I want to open by the first slide, which Andrew, I think you need to click the next slide for me, please. So, and keep clicking because everyone's a new bullet. So our congregational practices, what we do as Deer Lake United, really falls under three umbrellas, and this is defined in our governance structure. So the first main thing we do is ministry. The second bullet is governance, so how we operate. And the third bullet is administration. And so all three of those are the functions of this congregation. And so as such, I'm going to give updates through each of these three broad practices that the congregation engages in. So first is ministry updates, and our ministries are divided up into three ministry streams. So 3 practices, 3 streams. The first ministry stream is congregational life. The main thing around congregational life that I want to point out is under worship. I believe that's the nope. Okay, so worship. Last Sunday we did Christmas in July, and one of the things we did is we experimented with Christmas carols, inclusive language. I did receive feedback, and thank you for everyone who did submit the feedback. Overall, I think and why I'm appreciative of the feedback is because I think it does represent the will of the congregation, which is there was an openness to inclusive language, but there was some questions around the specific lyrics used. So for Christmas Eve, we will probably remove Christ or Jesus as king language, the imperial language, but keep other languages such as Lord or he. It was referred to me prior to the service too that this desire for inclusive language is not just from me or from the Affirm process and so forth. It actually has deep, deep roots within the United Church itself. And so Bill thankfully gave me a little booklet called Guidelines for Inclusive Language, which was prepared by the Interdivisional Task Force on the Changing Roles of Women and Men in Church and Society. It was approved by our General Counsel, which is our General Counsel Executive, and it was dated November 1981. So since 81, this kind of topic has been at least in the minds of the United Church of Canada. I'll tell you, in Christianity, it's been on the minds a lot longer, but officially as a denomination, we are very mindful of this move. So it's this tension between holding our traditions as well as wanting to be inclusive. And sometimes we get it right, and sometimes we don't get it right. And so we just need to tweak it a little bit. So that was the overall feedback, is Christmas carols continue to need to be tweaked, but overall the general direction is supported. I didn't announce it today in worship, but it was announced in What's Up that over the next 6 weeks, we were going to do summer of experimentation with worship. So we're going to be doing spiritual practices during the sermon time. Some of you are going to hate this. Some of you are going to love this. Some of you are going to be in the neutral. It's summer. People are traveling. We're experimenting. We'll go back to regularly scheduled programming starting September, specifically September 13th. We have a jam-packed fall of different things happening, including a baptism scheduled. We have a affirm celebration. We have lots of things for worship time there in the fall time. So it will be good. But the next few weeks, we're going to be just experimenting as a congregation that professes to explore and express spirituality. We're going to integrate that more into worship. So again, some of you may love it, some of you may hate it. Just, it's an experiment. And also what I'll say is if you show up one Sunday and you dislike it, doesn't mean you'll dislike the following week, because every week we're going to do something different. So there's not going to be a standard worship service, at least the spiritual practice part. What's Up will announce what those spiritual practices are. So it's an invitation to be open and to experiment. The next ministry umbrella is spiritual growth. So we're not doing any small groups right now currently, but as Brian announced, he's doing his book study starting in September. I believe the second Monday of September is what he announced. And then I'm starting again the Disciple Bible study. We did not get through the entire Bible. We need to finish up the New Testament after the book of Acts. So mainly the epistles, the letter, and Revelations. So that's from September 16th for 9 weeks. Anyone's welcome to join that. You don't have to have done the prior study, but if you have done that work in last programming year, we'll finish that process in this fall. Under the next ministry umbrella is Faithful Action. Like I announced, we are doing the cooling centers, so please come tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. to the sanctuary to help with that. We also do have an Affirm ministry celebration, so we've officially contacted Affirm United, saying that we unanimously agreed to be an affirming congregation. So that celebration kickoff is going to be on Sunday, September 13th, the second Sunday after Labor Day. That's the celebration. We're going to have visitors. We'll have a guest from the wider church to come and give a certificate. The Affirm team is discerning on what the party afterwards looks like. Oftentimes in the past, we've had a fall kickoff. Last year, we did not have a fall kickoff. It was not because of anything negative. It was because people were traveling, and the ones who normally put on the fall kickoff, aka the cookers and the cleaners and all that kind of stuff, were all away. So, not all, but a vast majority of them were away. So we didn't have a fall kickoff last year. So the question is, if you want to give me your feedback, do we want to do a fall kickoff on a Friday evening as we've done before? Do we want to just do the Affirm celebration as the fall kickoff? That's up to you all. Let me know, and I'll plan accordingly. If anyone wants to lead that, please let me know. So that's on September 13th. So the next piece after our ministries is our governance. Okay. So I've mentioned many times about the MIT, the Ministry Innovation Team. So last year we began a process with the Ministry Leadership Center, outside consultants, to help us re-envision or strengthen how we do ministry here. In working with the consultants for the last 8 months, it became clear that we were more resourced, and what we were looking for was not aligned to what the center offered. So after a lot of conversation and discernment with various groups, including the MIT, the Ministry Innovation Team, with the Ministry Leadership Center themselves and the council, it was determined that it was best to part ways. And so moving forward, we're going to restructure and do things a little differently. And that's what was handed out to you in person. If you want these copies, we could put a link in WhatsApp on Friday with this. We're going to have 2 teams under ministry renewal teams. And so what this is an intentional focus of taking time and looking at what we do, how we do it, and how can we further God's calling through the actions. So the first team is the ministry discernment team, which is pretty much the formal MIT. Now, under the MIT terms of reference, it talked about doing a ministry plan. This really is the focus of this new team. That's the main thing. That is the point of this group. A ministry plan is being required by the region to show what the long-term vision is for each congregation. So some individuals, even in this congregation, have the notion that we'll store up our resources as much as possible, and then we'll use and drain those resources as we need to survive as long as possible. The region is not loving this mentality. So the notion is, it's not just let's drain down a resource and till we die. It's more, how are we being strategic and how are we looking toward 2035, if you remember that report, and trying to really make intentional moves to, we're not just sustaining or doing what's in ministry called palliative care of churches, but really trying to envision something new. So the ministry discernment team is responsible for creating this ministry plan. I gave you terms of reference that were updated. The original terms of reference was part of the annual report, which is why I'm giving you the updated ones that were approved by the council. It, on the back side, has two graphs. So one is simply focusing on, if that's a lot of verbiage for you and you're like, too many words for my brain to process, this graph is for you. So in essence, the point of the ministry discernment team is to discern, clarify, and align. And hopefully, in discerning, clarifying, and aligning all of our practices, priorities, and decisions, we're going to lead to more faithful living out of God's calling. And you'll see the side arrow. Go back one more. The side arrow that goes from faithful living right back down, because discerning, clarifying, and aligning is not a one and done kind of a thing. It is a continual process where we are continually discerning, clarifying, and aligning ourselves to God's calling. So ultimately, it's getting into a rhythm where this is what we naturally do, both at a governance level, as well as an administrative level, as well as in our ministries. The next graphic is the fruitful deliverables. If you're like, what are you going to actually do? This is the accomplishment section in visual form. So if we start with the bottom of the image, we're going to ground ourselves in our theological and our identity statements. So that's our foundation. We're going to cultivate a culture to help make sure the work happens. We're going to focus on implementing God's calling, so the way ideas become actions, and we're going to develop a ministry plan, the tangible outcome. So what's the point of this ministry discernment team is a document that talks about what our strategic goals, strategic vision is for the church. So that's the first team. In collaboration with that, we have a second team that's entitled Ministry Action Team, which is, if you click the next, and that ministry action team is going to fulfill the second part of what MIT, the original MIT terms were. So they're going to create a new ministry expression. And so those are the terms of reference. There's no graph for that. In essence, we're going to use a model that was developed by Reverend Dr. Sarah B. Drummond, who speaks of how churches could become spiritual entrepreneurship. That's her title of her concept. And she has multiple stages and phases to work through this. So a new team has been formed that will be specifically focused on creating a new ministry that gives new life to the church in that way. So we have one group who's visioning and one group who's focused on implementing one idea. It may be small. It may be something that's just a one time and that's it, or it may be something more sustainable. We don't know yet. That's what the process is. So both of the teams fall under the wider umbrella of ministry renewal teams. And the premise is to shake things up, to think in new and broader terms. One thing I do want to advertise now is 2 years ago, 2023, 3 years ago, we did a ministry fair where the fellowship hall was filled with tables and booths, and we publicized all our ministries. I received numerous feedback that there's a desire to do that again because it's very good at communicating what we do here at the church. So I am hoping the next bullet is to do a ministry fair on Sunday, October 4th after worship. I am going to, instead of trying to do it all myself or try to recruit last minute people, I'm going to try to be more proactive and say if someone wants to help coordinate that, I've kind of laid it out what the tables are, who needs to be at each of the tables and so forth, but I need someone to actually help set up the tables, set up the signage, coordinate all the pieces and that kind of stuff. Ideally, this would be a team, not just one person, but I'll start with one person and then hopefully build a team around that. So a sign-up sheet is not on the bulletin board yet, but will be coming. So the invitation is, if you think you're good at organizing and behind the scenes work, this is nothing in front of people, it's all behind the scenes, please think about signing up for that team. And it's not just physical labor, it can also be just calling people, arranging things and that kind of stuff, logistic pieces. So is there any question over I apologize, I should have stopped at the ministries update. Were there any questions over the ministries with worship, spiritual growth, and faithful action? Okay. Is there any questions over the governance pieces? So the governance pieces is done by our council, M&P, Ministry and Personnel, trustees, and nominations and governance. Any questions on governance items? Okay, so the biggest one that I know a lot of people care about is our administrative functions of the church. So the next slide is going to be over our finances. So first I want to acknowledge before I take that bullet back if we're able to. The first thing I want to mention is we do have a new bookkeeper. Velma was our bookkeeper, so for those, just to make sure we're all caught up, Susan and Bruce were our treasurers. Whenever they resigned, we went out and we found a bookkeeper named Velma. Velma worked with us for 2 years, and she's retirement age and wants to move and do other adventures in her life. So now we have Lisa. Lisa is a bookkeeper, works for an accounting firm and is doing this on the side. It should be noted that, and why I started with Bruce and Susan is because for decades, if not since the beginning of the church until Velma, the bookkeeping for the church was done by volunteers, and it was a free service. When Velma was hired, it was $300 a month. Lisa is charging $350 a month. In addition to that, we've had to subscribe to QuickBooks, which is standard for bookkeeping practices these days for organizations like ours, and so we have that added expense. Why I'm emphasizing that is just to be aware that as time goes on and volunteers' skills and abilities and capacity becomes more limited, we are going to have to determine, do we want to continue doing something, or are we going to have to hire someone to do it? With our finances, I think we can all agree that we need to make sure it's done by someone responsible, legitimate, and knows what they're doing, and with expertise. So Lisa thankfully does that and is working with our finance people well. Pam, Linda, P, and Kathy R is doing a phenomenal job. But I just want to mention that those are increased costs. So talking about our actual finances and how much money we have, we're going to start by talking about the overall picture. So the overall picture is we approved a budget for this year with a negative $32,451. We need to remember with that, we have the 4% annual withdrawal. So if you're new to the church, we have an investment account that we take 4% from every year that we help pay our bills. And it's not touching the principal, it's based on the income earned from the investments. So this year's annual withdrawal was $18,410. So that, in theory, helps the deficit of negative 32 because we're taking it from income earned from the investments. So I will share that our current status as of May, we're a little bit behind because just how Lisa and the finance team work and operate. Just it takes more time for them to get the reports to me and to the council. But our offering is down, and that does need to be noted that it's down by $10,000 and 51 cents and 59 cents. Now what that means is we took the entire budgeted amount of what we expected to receive from offering, divided it by 12, and that's where we get the negative 10. It's summertime, so churches have a normal rhythm of receiving more income some months and lower some months. We're right now in a low season. So this is not one for panic, but this is something to be mindful of, that we are less than what we anticipated being if all 12 months were equal, which we know is not true. So, recognizing that we all need to consider what we give and how much we give on a regular basis, overall, the next bullet, our current deficit year to date is negative $4,540. This is due to the fact that we've had an increase in rentals, which we'll talk about, and other income streams. So the offering that I'm talking about is simply those who are regular givers that are envelope numbers. If you're just throwing cash or do other things, those are other categories, and all those categories are higher. We also have not spent as much money as we thought we were going to spend. There are still several projects that are still in limbo for mid-year. So we're not terrible financially, but we're not great financially. That's the same story as always. So we're never rich, we're never poor, we're not going to be closed tomorrow kind of thing. So how much cash do we actually have in our accounts? So under Van City, which is who we use for our banking, our main account has $17,500. Our e-transfer account, which allows us to do reimbursements for free, is $2,200. And our term deposits is $70,700. Now you may say, whoa, that's a lot in term deposits. The reason is because in finances, you want your money to be making money the best it can. And so term deposits are a relatively safe and easy way. It's a very low percentage rate of what we're making. However, it's better than making nothing. So that's why we have 70,000 in that. And that represents from a variety of sources and for a variety of reasons. So we're holding on to that. So in total in Van City, we have around $90,500. That means we could go to the bank tomorrow and pull out $90,500. So in addition to that, we also have our investment accounts. And our investment accounts, the primary account has $470,000, almost $471,000. Our congregational account has $119,000 and close to $500,000. And so that means in total, we have $590,450,000 or $100 in the investment accounts. What should be noted is the stock market is doing very well, and so that is representative of it. If the stock market crashes tomorrow, that number will dramatically decrease. So hopefully that there's not a Great Depression, but that just is the risk value. So I'm communicating transparently. That's not stable money per se, that is invested. Now with that said, there is a percentage of it that's in safer things than riskier things. Like it's not all in risky stuff, but I just want to be transparent. So overall, if you combine our Fan City as well as our investments, we have a total of $680,944. That means if the roof caves in today, we can pull from hopefully around $680,000. I say hopefully because we do have to get regional approval for large expenses and so forth. But in essence, friends, we have resources. God has blessed us very well, and we're doing very good with our funds. Are there any questions over the financial state of the church? Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about is rentals. So it is with sadness that I announce that Creative Dance is no longer renting from us. So Creative Dance, for those of you who have been around for a long time, will know since the 1980s, I think, if not definitely in the 90s, but I think in the 80s, Creative Dance has been an organization that has rented from our church. Due to low engagement and participation in signups, they are no longer able to exist in their form. So after 40 years that they've been here, they're closing down. So it is with sadness. And Chris, if anyone knows Chris, he's very sad about this, and we mourn with him and grieve this loss. But it is a reminder that organizations, even like ours, are all under stresses and constraints. With that said, we do welcome a new renter, which I've alluded to numerous times because we have a table in the back as well as a curtain that's hanging up in the doorway. So what's happening is on Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., Pear Tree Day Camp is renting the upper hall as well as the washroom space. They are paying $10,000 for 7 weeks. This is going to be a major cash inflow. They paid part of that $10,000 already, which is why our bank account has such a high. They'll pay the remaining of the balance when the day camp concludes August 21st. So while I understand for some it may be annoying to deal with a rental or having so much chaos and kids and so forth here, we do financially need this rental. And since it's summertime and things are relatively quiet, I will say overall, while there have been some hiccups, overall it's been very smooth. So the hope is that this day camp will come back each year and keep doing what they're doing. So that's the hope, at least based on the experience so far. Knock on wood, hopefully everything continues to go as well as it does. The impact is we need a square table in the back. That's more so that myself or someone else isn't constantly knocking down and putting back tables back up, because there are groups throughout the week that are using the space. And that is also why the curtain has been installed. It is a temporary curtain. It is not a permanent feature, but it does raise the question, do we want some type of curtain or doorway there? So if you have thoughts or feedback, let me know, but it is handy when a meeting space is happening to throw that curtain over, and then that way this room becomes very quiet, or very private, not quiet, but private, and I can continue doing my work, walking back and forth from my office to Pam or to the washroom or to whatever, and I'm not disrupting any group in here. So it is something to consider, is do we want to install a curtain or even a doorway there? We're not doing that immediately. It's just the opportunity came up, and so it's good to reflect and think about how we want to handle that. Are there any questions around rentals of the church? Besides that, all the other rental groups are functioning as normal. Okay, so the next big piece is the building. So as you know, months ago, we had a major storm season. It was a week or so. We had flooding around the building. I point down by my office outside. There's a stairwell going downstairs to the basement that was completely flooded. So we had to put up multiple roofs trying to deal with how much rain came. Part of the consequence of that downpour was also a leak in our flat roofs. We technically have two roofs on this building, a flat one over the fellowship hall and a sloped one over the sanctuary and this side of the building. The flat one was put in 2008 for 20 years, so that would be 2028 for running out. The one above us was put in 2003 for 30 years, which is 2033. So with a leak in the flat roof, we have received estimates, and ultimately what the council has decided to do is use the building contingency fund to do a roof assessment by an independent roofer to come in and to assess the condition of both roofs, to tell us what they think, and then to use the building contingency fund to fix the actual leak. We estimate that roof assessment will cost around $3,000 and the roof leak will cost around $2,000. That's the initial estimates based on some quotes we got. I will say that a roofer came and gave a quote, and his response when I asked him about the state of the roof, he says that at minimum we probably can get by with 5 additional years on the flat roof. So we are receiving conflicting reports on how dire the flat roof is or is not, which is why we want an assessment done so we know exactly what it is, and we want it done by an independent person so it's not someone who's biased towards getting work done. So the hope is, or the intention is, to use the building contingency fund to do the roof assessment and fix the leak. Are there any questions about that part of the building with the roof? Okay, so the next thing to talk about is the washroom, because we talked about redoing our washrooms numerous times now. So because of the roof leak and the question around how much the roof leak may cost us and the roofs may cost us, the washrooms project has been put on hold for right now. While I talk about how we have sufficient funds for our church, we are also not extremely wealthy. So we need to make sure what we do with our money is responsible and also, dare I suggest, God-led. So before jumping into doing the washrooms and undertaking numerous projects and then end up with an oopsie daisy at the end, we're taking the mindset of being a little bit more cautious. So in that vein, the council discussed doing a building condition report. This building condition report has been estimated to be around $6,500. The intention behind it is that as the ministry plan is being done by the ministry discernment team, they need to look at this physical asset and see what the lifespan is for this building and different components of this building, and what projects are coming sooner than later and which ones are more elected and can be done or not done. So that is what the congregational meeting next Sunday is about approving that expense. The reason why they're coming to you with this is the council must come to the congregation if it is a significant expenditure. The council has already approved the roof assessment and the leak because we feel like that has to be done. That's logically needs to be done, and it's not terribly that much high. But this was a threshold that was uncomfortable for the council not to come to you for. So we're not trying to rush a decision or bypass anybody or whatever. We're trying to be timely because the building status and stuff, you want to do those kind of inspections when the weather is nicer than not. And it's going to take us time to do the roof assessment, to fix the roof, then we'll do the building condition report. So we just want to go ahead and do it preemptively where you all give your permission for that. So at the end of the day, do we have the funds to do all of these projects? Yes, absolutely. Do we need to be mindful of how we're using our money? Yes, absolutely. And the council believes, and I support the council on this, that we believe that this is a benefit to helping us understand how to maintain our building best. Are there any questions over the congregational meeting next Sunday and or the building overall? Yes, Mike.
Did the consultation give you projections on budget for fixes?
It can do that. The ones we cited or quoted does not do that because churches, so the question for those who are watching online is, does the building condition report come with a projected budget for expenses? And the reason we didn't pursue that, but it's open to negotiation, I guess, if we want to, I should look at Shelley, not Ellen anymore. Shelley, I don't know if we want to entertain this, is because how churches function is we don't have lots of money to delegate. You know, we're not having surplus after surplus and determining that. We're getting by year to year. And so the budgeting process is very much faith-based and very much reliant on year to year. So we can have a budget made, but that doesn't mean we're in any way be able to fulfill that budget. So that was the logic for not moving forward with it. It's just that's not how churches operate. Colleen?
Who's doing this assessment? What kind of company is that? What kind of construction company, or like who?
The building condition report?
Yeah.
So Alan, do you,
Engineering companies that specialize in doing depreciation reports and building condition reports. So they're engineers.
engineering companies who specialize in depreciation reports and building maintenance and those type of things is the answer. And the question was, in case you didn't hear it, was who does these type of reports? And I asked Ellen because Ellen was designated by the council to receive the quotes and obtain the quotes for the council. So that's why I looked at Ellen, just to be transparent. All right, any other questions about the building? Yes. Sure.
I just want to make sure people realize that we took in everybody's expertise about that and made sure the questions were answered by those companies that gave the quotes.
So we took in, Shelley as chair wants to make sure the congregation is aware that we consulted with multiple individuals and their expertise, and we also consulted with all the companies to make sure that everything was aligned together and working well. That was a paraphrase, but is that good enough? Or I'm getting sleepy, so my language is slipping. So, and Shelley will be chairing that meeting as the congregational chair, and I presume Andrew will be here to take the minutes for that meeting as the congregational secretary. So yes, If there is, I will say, if there's any information that would assist you in that decision, because we're not trying to rush the decision, truly. If there's anything you need, please reach out to Shelley or myself, and so we can do that ahead of time to make next Sunday's meeting as smooth as possible. But also, we do need a decision about that. So moving on to the next administration update is staff. So as reported a few months ago, Pam has had some concerns, personal health concerns. She wants everyone to know she's doing well. She continues to wait for treatment and so forth, but she's doing an awesome job. I will say, and this is a worship note, that sometimes the PowerPoint words look really weird on the screen on Sunday morning. They'll look way big or way small. We are spending months and months trying to figure out what that is. That is not because of Pam. That's because our computers don't like talking to each other sometimes. So just be aware that whenever that happens, that is not an intentional move, and it's not just an easy what's wrong with that kind of fix. It's something between the two computers. But overall, Pam is doing great. She comes in on Thursdays and Fridays from 8 to noon. Everyone here is respecting her time in the sense of, I know people are reaching out as they need to, but they're not reaching out abundance or taking too much of her time, so that she can make sure she can stay on top of our financial state as well as our worship preparations. And so thank you for how you've been engaging with Pam during the summer months. Her summer hours her regular hours, that's how I'll say it, her regular hours resume September, I believe 6th or 5th, somewhere around there, so after Labor Day. Regarding me real fast, I do want to state, and I have something read because as I get tired from worship, my language is sloppy, and I don't want to offend anybody, and I don't want to be defensive, because this is about me and my time off. There are times comments made about my time off and how much time I get off. And so, as many of you know, healthy ministry includes times of rest, renewal, and continuing education. Just as we encourage one another to care for our own well-being, I also need to make sure that I'm taking the necessary time to renew and to continue growing in my own ministry. I want to provide some context around my schedule. Ministry is not a typical Monday to Friday role. My regular days away from church are technically Saturday and Monday, which means that my time off does not in any way align with the traditional weekend unless I'm off. Because Sundays are central to the life of the church, and because Saturdays are often when weddings, funerals, or other ministry commitments happen, I rarely have the opportunity to take a full weekend away. There are also many weeks when I'm not able to take 2 full days away because ministry needs happen outside of regular weekday hours. I work hard to maintain at least one consistent day of rest each week, while also recognizing that ministry often requires flexibility. The time away I receive is consistent with the standards of the United Church of Canada. In fact, my scheduled time away is only 2 additional weekdays beyond what is normally provided for ministries across the denomination. That is the standard in place. Vacation, study leave, and other designated time away are part of the normal rhythm of ministry and are important for sustaining healthy leadership for long term. During these periods, appropriate coverage will always be in place for pastoral emergencies, and I make sure that important ministry needs are communicated ahead of time. I am grateful for a congregation that values spiritual growth, faithful action, and healthy community. Thank you for recognizing the times of rest are not a stepping away from ministry, but a way of returning to it with renewed energy and creativity purpose. And I'm not trying to target anybody, but it does invoke strings or motions of guilt or like I'm wrong for taking time off, with simple comments of, oh, it looks like you get a lot of time off coming up, or, oh, wow, you're never here sometimes, and those kind of comments. Friends, I work a lot, and so the time I do take off is much needed. And so if you could just not say those comments to me, I would appreciate it. So thank you. So then the last thing, yes,
Can I just say something?
you can, Bill.
Joseph, I'm concerned that you have to bring these concerns to a congregation meeting or a town hall personally. For me, this is an issue that the elected leadership of the congregation should be dealing with, not you directly. You should be dealing with them on that, and they should report to us. I'm you're taking the responsibility for that, not the leadership of the congregation. And so I'd like to ask Shelley and the others that, I come from the old system where there was an ministry and personnel committee, and this kind of concern would have gone to that committee, and that committee would have reported to the congregation about any concerns about the minister's salary, time off, and all of that. It wouldn't be up to the ministers to do that, and I think that's a very important distinction to draw, and I would think that our system should still accommodate that.
Yeah.
So I'd like to ask that the board or the council take responsibility for doing this kind of reporting on the working conditions or the work-life balance of our employees, of our minister, and they take responsibility for reporting. If there wasn't concern, it's really hard for us to raise that directly with you in this sort of situation, and I think that we need those people who have that responsibility for the congregation to take that role. I'd just like you folks to consider that.
Fair enough. So Bill, for those watching online, if I can consolidate or be concise or summarize what Bill said, and it is 100% true, he's not wrong on this, which is our governance structure is set up where I report to a ministry and personnel committee, and what Bill reminded me, as well as invited the leadership team to consider, is instead of me talking about comments around my time off and whatnot, that technically it should be from our leadership team to set those boundaries with the congregation. So it's not on the onus on me to communicate what my needs are to the whole congregation, but to work with ministry and personnel on what my needs are, and then ministry and personnel to report that to you. And that's a fair protection. And I know that's done in love and protection for me and my well-being and how I'm being perceived right now and so forth. So I appreciate that, and yes, and that's not a slight against the leadership team because they didn't know I was going to say that today, but that is a very fair point. Any other comments or questions about staffing in general? Okay, and the last one is our United Church of Canada denominational commitments. So it's not lost on me as time goes by very quickly in my world, that Florence and I attended almost over a month, well, definitely over a month ago, but a month and a half ago, the regional meeting for the Pacific Mountain region. And we have not reported technically what happened at that meeting back. So Florence will be working on that in the coming weeks to make sure the congregation knows. But ultimately, friends, all things at the regional level are going well. It was a good regional meeting. We had it in, where did we have it in? Kamloops. It's been so long. Kamloops, and it was a Thursday through a Sunday. That was the Sunday the choir led the worship here. That was whenever Margaret Trim was here for worship. And so Florence will be reporting back to you what happened at that meeting, but rest assured all is going well, and it was a good meeting. There was no huge issues from the regional level. So friends, that's all of the pieces. This is a time I want to open it up to any other general questions, comments, grievances, or gratitude. It is 12:40, just as a time check. So I think we're doing well, given what time we started. Is there any comments or things I need to be aware of, or Shelley is here as far as council needs to be aware of? Yes. Yes. So Ellen asked, could I identify who's on both of the ministry renewal teams? That is on the terms of reference sheet of paper. So if you have it, the ministry discernment team, if I can do this from memory, let's see how good I am here. So we have Shelley, Shelley R, Ann B, Ellen J, Gloria F, Gary F, Gary H, Sharon H, Paul A, Linda W, Elizabeth C, and Andrew H. And so that's a very, not a large group, but that is a very comprehensive group that represents many different circles within our congregation. The ministry action team, and I'm really thankful for these individuals who are willing to engage with this process. It's been a bit bumpy trying to organize it, but I think we have a path forward. So those individuals from memory, so please don't critique me on the order, is Phyllis S, Claire S, Steve M, Bruce VL, Florence R, and Becky A, and am I forgetting someone? That's all, 6. Perfect. So those are the individuals who are serving on those 2 teams, which also represents a diverse group of individuals as well. So there's not a group or a clique. We've moved very intentionally away, at least in the last 6 years, moving away from one group of people having all the power and so forth. We're trying to be inclusive of all. And so, yes, so those are very much representative of active folk who do a lot around here. I will say that. These names are all hopefully familiar to you, so you'll see the people around. Okay. Any other questions, thoughts, or comments? Otherwise, I'm assuming a congregation is happy, which makes me happy at the end of the day. Yes, Phyllis.
I would like to thank people that jump in and do things that not their job. And I'd like to say thank you to Dawn and Ellen for their creativity last night. They used the parking lot as a fundraiser. And thank you.
So let's give them a round of applause. So for those who didn't hear what you're applauding, and for those who are watching online, Phyllis raised an excellent point of gratitude for those who take initiatives. I know people are very sensitive in our context of not wanting to step on people's toes, but also it is commendable when people do step up randomly and just take on doing a job. And so even though you may not have a formal job or role, for those who do step in, whatever that might look like, however small or big ways, a special thank you to those. And then Phyllis wanted to especially acknowledge Ellen J. and Don S. as they were here last night. As some of you may know, Deer Lake Park was having special events or a special concert last night, and we are using our parking lot as a fundraiser. So just to be clear, our parking lot normally is free to use, and we are very generous with our parking lot. But as we also face deficits, it's not going to help anybody if we're not here. So we used it as a fundraiser, and I believe the amount was $840 raised last night for our parking lot. So again, we do try to be community focused, but we are thankful for those moments when we can get a little income from using our assets wisely. Any other thoughts or comments?
So there's another concert tonight, or are they prepared to do it again?
So it was raised, there's a concert tonight, and the answer is yes. You can come and you can park for $20 donation. We have a fancy square device, which means we take now credit card, cash, or check made out to Deer Lake United Church. And incidentally, that still is the way you give to us, even if you just want to come. So if you're feeling so compelled to help with that $4,000 deficit, please know there are multiple ways to give to us. Any other comments or thoughts? Okay. Overall, I do think everything's running smoothly. I did want to give this quite extensive update because we've had so much happening. We have a lot to celebrate around here. Actually, I think we have more to celebrate than to cry about or grieve about. Things are going really well. And so thank you for being a great congregation that you are. And just know that if you do have any feedback, Shelley is definitely most open as council chair. Becky is our MMP chair and is here today, so feel free to contact her. Linda P is our treasurer as well as our deputy trustees chair, so if you have trustees matter. And I believe it's Bruce VL who is our chair of nominations and governance. He's not here today, but he is open to hearing your volunteer for positions of the church if you wish. So our leadership is great and all things are doing well. So friends, in that spirit of gratitude, let us go to God in prayer. Holy One, we thank you for this beloved church. We thank you for all the ways that you are calling us and giving us many opportunities to be your light, life, and love in this world. As we go out this day, be with whatever team we're rooting for and remind us that you are with us no matter what we carry, that the life of faith is one of just taking a moment to respond to you little by little. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. All right, friends, thank you very much, and I'll see you next time.